Okay, so as I mentioned yesterday, Midnight is here in the game now, and he's a fantastic character. Definitely much better than Evergreen. Like, if you have to summon between the two of them, I'll definitely say Midnight. I'll use this video to tell you why Midnight is such a great character, and then some of my thoughts about whether you should summon him or not, or do you want to save up your resources, etc. Okay, so if we actually go into his skills, let's see. So he is all dark, so very nice. And as I mentioned also yesterday in Evergreen's video, and also I kind of mentioned this a lot, but dark element is definitely the element I feel that have the least coverage, purely because unless you're lucky enough to get Mystican or Cobra as one of your SSR, but even then, if you do get them, it could potentially be difficult for you to actually dupe them out to force out to unlock their full skill. So if you're not actually talking about the SSRs, you are pretty much left with just Kageyama, who is the only character with all dark skills, or you have Ichiya and Otia, but only half of their kit is dark. So that's kind of why dark is definitely one of the most sought after element, especially if you haven't summoned on Jalal in the previous banner. Then Midnight is definitely the best dark breaker, and in fact, out of all the character, Midnight is the best dark breaker, like hands down, purely because not only he has four skills which are dark, which is absolutely amazing, but also his skills. He has this passive which can inflict pain, and pain reduces darkness defense by half a second for 12 seconds, and it can be stacked 30 times. So that's actually very, very strong as well. So not only you are doing a lot of dark damage, you are making sure the enemy take more dark damage as well. So in case that you are facing a very, very difficult boss where just one dark breaker is not enough and you actually need to use two, like Midnight is not only gonna help himself but also help out the whole team. So he's very like literally hands down the best darkness character in the game right now. So definitely go for it if that is one element you are really lacking. Now in terms of his actual skills, let me do it on the skill preview. It's gonna be easier. So in terms of his skills, his first skill doesn't say much other than the fact it do damage. But it's able to do a bit of a crowd movement by moving the enemies in front together. So you can see before those three enemies were kind of spaced out like this, but now they're all moved together, which is quite nice. It has decent amount of range as well, as you can see. So it's actually quite nice, quite able to hit quite far back as well. Then if you're looking at the second skill, what's gonna say is that it's also continuous attracting the enemy together, and they also have a reduced movement speed by 80 seconds, which is a really long time. Now I'm just gonna have a rough idea of how long it lasts, but one thing, because they attract all of the enemy together, so very similar to skill 1, you're also able to move all of the enemy into the same space, allow you to follow up with other attacks, so that's very nice. So if I do this, okay, so the range is not as high as before, as you can see I was only able to attract 3 of them together, but there is definitely some kind of movement. So yeah, so the range is not ideal, unless I am positioning it incorrectly. Okay, so it seems like the range is like almost like a straight line in front, but it doesn't have a very wide range. So you may have trouble grabbing left and right together. But if it's like front and back, it's quite easy for you to grab them all together. But anyway, it's quite a nice skill. Let's see how long it actually lasts. It, it feels like about 5 seconds with 6 seconds, which is actually really nice because you have like literally 5 or 6 seconds where the enemy have reduced movement speed by 80%. So essentially, when you're doing that, the enemy won't be able to get out of it pretty much because you're continuously attracting them together. So you're forcing the enemy to be in that position. And also, one nice thing about this game is that when you switch out a character, the character's skill is still ongoing, but then the next character will be out. So basically, there's like a brief timing where both character, so the first character will finish off his skill casting while the second character is already on the field. So basically, you have a time period when both characters is on the field, and if you have an attack which lasts for like 5 seconds and continuously, almost like controlling, like it's not, yeah, essentially like this is a control skill, right? If you are controlling the enemy from not able to do much, that essentially buys your net character about 3 or 4 seconds, like almost like immunity, where he is free to charge up or in a position, will do whatever he wants, without at too much risk of taking damage. So that's really good. Like if you do want to use Midnight as the starting character and then like swapping him out, so that's why this is also a really good skill. Then if we look at the third one, I'm not too sure what cannot be selected when casting this skill, because if the enemy do an AoE attack, does that mean he's attacking you or not? So I'm not too sure. And unless I have an unless you actually try this out in real battle, because in this trial mode, you're not able to like the enemy doesn't hit back. So I'm not too sure about this. Cannot be selected. If anyone do know, then post in the comment section, please. But I'm not too sure exactly what it means by cannot be selected, because I don't think it's the same as control immunity either. Because his skill 4 then also have control immunity. But anyway, I'm gonna assume this is gonna be something like reduce enemy hit rate, or maybe that you have 100% uh, immunity to damage, but not to control. I don't know. I don't know how it works really. But if we actually look at the skill itself, you can see it kind of briefly push back the enemy tiny bit. So this is nice to create a bit of a distance. And then because his AoE is a normal attack and also push back the enemy slightly, you're actually able to create like almost a safe distance, which is actually very important, because if you actually look at Midnight stats, he is a bit of like a glass cannon. So you don't want to be in too close range with the enemy where the enemy is able to deal a lot of damage to you in your normal kind of attack exchange. So that's kind of pretty much it for this one. It's also able to inflict pain. No, actually inflicting pain is the passive skill I was talking about. So every single time when the skill hit, you inflict pain. And also what you can see is that, wait. Okay, I think you only inflict pain once per skill rather than once per attack. Because for the last hit, this kind of horizontal slash, I don't see the word pain pop up again. So I think this is per skill rather than per attack. Okay, fine. And then for skill 4, this is an AoE, which I don't know, I found the animation really weird. Because right now you can see those 4 characters are like this. If you look at the animation, it feels like they're putting them together, and then all of a sudden they're spaced out again. So it didn't actually do any movement. Um, to them in the end. Like even though it says attracts nearby enemy to him, yes, it attract them. But then when it detonates, then it kind of moves everyone back out again. So it almost like doing nothing to the actual positioning of the characters, which I personally find a bit weird. That like especially the animation and stuff. But in terms of the skill itself, it's a decent skill. It has pretty high damage, and also very high. Sorry, very high damage and also a decent amount of control immunity for 1.1 seconds. So I think this is definitely useful, especially considering Midnight is a glass cannon. So when you're in PvP arena mode, etc., it's very easy for someone to control you, and then they just fire off, all 4 of their skills back to back. Having that control immunity basically allow you to almost, take that control and then give you time to dodge their subsequent attack. So that's always nice, especially in PvP. Okay, so that's kind of all of the basic skill kit, which is all pretty nice. There's a lot on kind of like positioning manipulation on the enemies, which I really like, because that kind of means he's really, really good in fighting against mobs when you have multiple enemy all at once, but also just in terms of a single target, because he has really high attack. I think that's going to be pretty decent as well. So that's kind of Midnight, and then if you look at his passive, I already talked about this one. This one very good, especially when you need to break Dark Shield, so very nice passive there. Then for this one, this is like one of the strongest passive for leader skill, and that's kind of like single-handed. Even if you are not using Midnight to attack, having this is probably going to be enough. But increased skill cooldown reduction by 10% is massive. Like for example, if you're in boss battle, this allow you to cycle through all 4 of your skills every single time when you change character. Sometimes for certain characters, what I've noticed is that when you actually swap out, the character will rotate them. Not all of the skills will be back on cooldown, and sometimes when you wait for 1 or 2 seconds, which doesn't sound like a really long time, but the reason why it makes a massive difference is that when you have any character who have the ability to reduce defense, like essentially debuff the enemy, right? This debuff is for 12 seconds, right? This one's for 12 seconds. And basically, what you really want to do is that within the 12 seconds, when the enemy is being debuffed, you want to swap out quickly to your other two characters to launch off their attacks. However, a lot of time one finding is that when you actually try to do this quick rotation on your characters to take advantage of this, it doesn't always work because some of the cooldowns on other characters are more than 12 seconds, so you're not actually able to rotate them around. I'm going to take one easy example, which is Natsu, who have very high damage on this one. This is 24 seconds. So vast majority of the time, you're not able to do a rotation based on this. This one's like 18 seconds, 12 seconds, 12 seconds, right? So also, Gajo also have really high attack, 24/7. But you can see a lot of this do not actually have enough timing for you to actually come out of cooldown and then benefit from your kind of debuff. And having this, I know it's only 10%, so it's not going to make you, 18 seconds all the way down to 12 seconds, but it still help you a lot when you need to choose the order of attack. You want to use your ultimate to nuke first, and then use the other skills, which have like lower cooldown, etc. So it's going to benefit. But yeah, so like I said, having the skill cooldown reduction by 10% is actually really, really massive. We need to do those kind of quick rotations to maximize the amount of damage you're able to do in boss battles for kind of up against kind of just like elite enemy in normal PvE. So this is actually a very, very useful leader skill. Luckily, you get the passive even when you only have like a 3-star. So even if you do not summon on Midnight, Midnight have this. So if you do not summon Midnight, like will max him out for like a pure DPS kind of character, he is still good even as like a utility character to reduce the skill cooldown. So that's very, very, very nice. And then you have this one. So this one is basically uh so normally I don't want to evaluate things like this because it takes a long time because you have to be 6-star. But once again, Midnight's one is really, really nice. Every single one of them is really nice. The first one is flat damage reduction by 20%. This is very, very good already because he's a bit of a glass cannon, so a 20% damage reduction is nice. It's also better than, for example, a 20% increase in defense because his defense is already pretty low as a glass cannon. So increase in defense doesn't mean much. However, because his defense is already low, he will be taking a lot of damage. Therefore, damage reduction by 20% is actually a lot. So this is actually really good, even on the first level. Second level, every single time when you hit Spiral Pain on an enemy in pain, then the cooldown of contorted space is reduced by 0.1 second. So that is this one. And then Spiral Pain is this one. Now, the cool thing about this is that whenever his skill can inflict pain for 12 seconds, so what normally you want to do is you just use one other attack to inflict pain, then you use this one, and if you remember, this one lasts for like 4 or 5 seconds. I don't know how many attacks that is, but I'm gonna guess that's minimum 4 or 5 attacks as well. So that basically means actually that's not that much, only like 0.4 or 0.5 seconds. Let me see how many times it actually attacks. Is it 1 per second or is it actually a bit more frequent? Okay, it's way more than like if you look at the number of times like that number 2 appears, this is a lot. This feels like easily. I just done rough count. That's at least 10. I counted 12, but I can probably be wrong. Yeah, I counted 12 again, so I'm gonna guess it's 12. Um, and that basically means you are gonna reduce. I mean, it doesn't sound like very much, but still, that is still a solid 1.2 second cooldown reduction. And then if you add in his leader skill, which is 10%, this is 24 seconds. So you reduce by 2.4 first, then reduce by another 1.2. So basically, you came down this cooldown from 24 seconds to 20 seconds, which is actually pretty decent. Like that's not bad. So just knowing that this is pretty good, and also once again in PvP, when a lot of time you are almost like on a battle of how fast you can release your skill, this is actually going to be really massive because you're able to release your ultimate skill before the enemy is able to release their. Normally means you will win that matchup. So it's just as simple as that. So that is actually very strong in PvP. Then the last one contorted space will grant shield. So once again, it's this one. The shield doesn't look like very much. It's only 80% of physical attack. Whereas a normal ultimate already do like 87% for normal attack. So basically, you are able to block one skilled attack, which is, I guess, is still okay. Especially if you're also dodging as well, then I think it's not bad. But also, it's actually based. The shield is scaling based on his physical attack, and like I said, he's a glass cannon, so that's really nice as well. It's nice that it's not scaling based on his defense or HP because Midnight has really low stats in those two, but it's actually scaling based on his physical attack, which he actually has a really high physical attack, so that's really nice. It lasts for 15 seconds as well, so a very long time. But yeah, like I said, only 80% point means that you can only block one skill attack. But once again, for glass cannon, that's actually pretty decent. So yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts on Midnight as a whole. Overall, I honestly think he's one of the best characters in the game out of all the kids I've seen so far. Uh, Even at 3 star, he is able to become a very good utility character by reducing skill cooldown. So that's by itself is really nice. In terms of damage output, he has really high physical attack, so very high attack. Like that crit damage is crit hit is kind of on par with other DPS as well, but he is definitely able to do a lot higher number of attacks. Like if you look at his attack scaling, etc. And then he is also of dark elements, so that basically means from coverage perspective, he is possibly one of the ones that people lack the most. And when you do eventually max him out, his second passive, the passive he gets after his 6 star is massive as well. So overall, like every single part of him is good. Like literally every single part of him is good, and that's why he is one of the best characters in my opinion. Now, should we summon him? I so I'm gonna be fully transparent, which is saying that I am not gonna summon him, and I will tell you the reason why. Not because he's not a great character. Like if I have to rank off the character in the game, he's definitely up there, probably in my top 3 or top 5. So I definitely do recommend people summoning. The only reason why I am gonna skip him is that if you watch my previous video on uh, energy circles, there was an event I mentioned at the end where you are actually able to get a 6 star energy circle by doing 1,000 summons during that event. Now I don't know whether that event ever come back, but to me that 6 star energy stone is massive for free to players like me. Like otherwise there's like literally no way of getting that because you're not going to rank very high in other events competitively. So for me that is massive, and personally I'm just gonna wait till I have a lot of summons. Um, so I will still summon at midnight, but just not now. I will much rather wait for when I have like close to 1,000 summons, and also that event is out for me to then actually go all out on midnight and get him straight up to like 6 star and above, etc. So that's personally the way I'm gonna plan my characters. Not saying that it's not good. It's just that I prefer to get some extra freebies out of it. And right now, because I already summoned on Jalal, I don't feel like I'm in such desperate need to get a dark character, so I think I'm able to continue with my day-to-day game content without Midnight, even though he's a very great character. But yeah, in long-term world, Midnight is definitely one of the first characters that I would want to level up and potentially all the way to the max as well. So that's something to bear in mind. But yeah, ultimately the decision is yours. If you are also like me, want to get some freebies, then I would suggest holding on to your resources. But even then, I'm not sure, for example, whether that event will ever come back at the same time. For example, Midnight is on a banner. So maybe if you are waiting to do 1,000 summons on that event, you're also somewhat going to be relying on a bit of like how they actually roll out the event and which banner will be available at that time. So it's completely up to you whether you want to wait that long. But overall, he's a very good character. Definitely someone for you to start building up, even if it's not now, but in the future. But definitely someone you want to focus on.